Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the PENON Dome. This is the latest OnePlus 3 hybrid from PENON. It sports a 10mm driver and 3 ABAs. Two are Sonyans in the mid-range and one is a single Knowles. There's been talk that this is probably a substitute for the Globe, which is a OnePlus 2, which also has the same kind of one BA from Knowles, one BA from Sonyan, and in a single DD. But I don't believe it's a substitute. I think it's just another offering from PENON to try and fill in the gaps or the possible niches which are still open. And this time around, what they've opted with the Dome is to give us a tuning which follows more that tucked bass style, like we see on the on the Neo 5, like you see on the T Audio Hype 2, the variations, that kind of tucked bass. What then differentiates all of those IEMs which have that tucked bass is, does the tuck happen at 200 Hertz or closer to 300 Hertz? And by happening at 200 Hertz or 300 Hertz will determine how much mid bass and how much ultimate slam you have, okay? As for the Dome, the typical PENON in terms of build quality and what to be expected. The actual case is this case that it brings, but I also bought the ASOS Cable besides buying the IEM, and that brings a slightly bigger case which I prefer. So that's the case that I'm actually using. Not that the stock cable isn't good. The stock cable is fine. However, I do feel that the ASOS did bring a little extra to the equation. It did make the Dome sound just that little extra bit more tighter. We all know that cables especially are always a very delicate subject. There are those that will basically give a kidney away for standing by their idea that a cable makes a difference. I'm not that hardcore, but yes, I have seen a few times where a cable has been beneficial and has introduced benefits into the sound, but that benefit has come down more to what the overall electrical characteristics of that cable is than necessarily it being a $1,000 cable, because the ASOS is a perfect example. The ASOS, in terms of its electrical measurements, its DCR resistance, its inductance and capacitance measured very well, and making it being a good solid IEM in terms of what it cable of what it can offer in terms of performance. And I've seen many cables which are way more expensive that didn't measure as well, and honestly I didn't see as well their performance being there. You could argue, oh, but the weaving and this and the materials used, okay, fine, as long as, in my opinion, the electrical characteristics of a cable are kept within certain parameters, then that cable will be let's say neutral in the whole equation and in the whole balance of impedance between cable and IEM. Anyway, not carrying on here with the cable thing, because otherwise it's going to open up a whole can of worms. As for the IEM itself, it's got the beautiful build. It's a resin shell. It's light. You can see inside of the actual shell and see all the drivers, and everything is nice and neat. It's got a very clean, clinical build. It fits beautifully. The nozzle's got a nice length to it. I'm using the stock tips, as you can see. The ASOS cable, oh yes, I forgot to mention, the ASOS cable is interchangeable tips. I'm actually using a rhodium tip instead of the stock one, which is gold colored. This is a rhodium. And overall, I mean, in terms of its hardware, the Dome is perfect. Honestly, for me, it's perfect. It fits me well. It doesn't fatigue me in terms of its weight or anything of the sort. It stays put. Nice, just absolutely, tick the right boxes when it comes to that. What then have I kind of selected here to do this comparison? And not so much a comparison to ascertain who is the winner, but to position it, okay? Well, first of all, I used a couple of different dongles, which I usually connect up with either my Topping A50S or then my NX7. I just like these two amplifiers a lot. I just like them. I use my 2RA as well, but the 2RA for some reason doesn't match as sometimes as ideally as I would like with certain IEMs. And I've found instances where the matching that it happened actually closed down the sound of the IEM when the IEM was actually a brighter sounding IEM. It was a more open sounding IEM. But anyway, let's not also delve too much into that. I used my A50S, I used my NX7, and then I used these dongles, the KN RU7, which uses that single deck technology, the Q-Style M15 with the 9281, the Awon Yuki with the CS43198, and then the HIDIZS S9 Pro Plus, known as Martha. I was pleasantly surprised, so much so that I actually have now included in this group of dongles that I like using mainly for my comparisons. I'm waiting on something using an AKM to be hopefully the AKM, let's say, representative. But these two, okay, the S9 Pro Plus and the EPZ TP30, they both use the 9038 Q2M, and it's interesting to see how they both sound so different. ESS usually is known for more clinical, more I would almost say sterile presentation, while for example something like the AKM ones are known for being a warmer presentation. This single deck technology being used in the KN has also got more that warmer presentation. And the 9281 here, also in ESS, it's got that clinical presentation, but it adds a good sense of warmth to it, and it all has to do basically down to the obviously implementation it's done. And over here, the implementation has been different enough for it to be quite obvious that this has got a more clinical, more sterile presentation. Nice, it sounds good, and I'm guessing that there will be plenty of people that like it. I liked it, I enjoyed it. I have nothing wrong with it, but I prefer a warmer, a little bit more cozy presentation, and the S9 Pro Plus does that. The way they've implemented that, and the fact that you've also got the filters that you can change to better adjust the sound profile, and I'm not sure if that really is the reason why it sounds warmer, but the truth is it just sounds much more lush, much more warm, much more engaging, much more organic. It still retains that ESS clinical, very technical character, yes, but because it's now added this warmth into the equation, it makes for a deck or dongle rather that is, in my opinion, way more interesting to listen and not as fatiguing. Sometimes when I'm using the ESS based decks, dongles, here I go again with decks, dongles, I find that after a while it becomes a little bit fatiguing, and that's the reason why I end up using mainly these three, the Cayenne and the Awon, the Yuki, and then as well the M15, because I can listen to any one of these three for hours and I just don't get it. They have their own particular sound, that's true, but they just have this very nice way of presenting themselves, which makes for a very unobtrusive and unfatiguing sound. And the S9 Pro Plus, the Martha, has now been able to tick the boxes to make it, a little dongle that I will also start using more frequently. And I did in this comparison, or this review for the Dome. As always, I mainly use them connected with the amps. Like I said, I never use them by themselves, although I did use it by itself. And just by itself, either with the 3.5 or the 4.4, it was, sounding still very good. There was really nothing, honestly, for the $79 that it costs, and compared to the S9 Pro, on which this basically kind of is the upgrade, the difference is quite big. The S9 Pro was nice, I'm not going to say it wasn't, but this is more along the lines of what I prefer. So this is a better dongle in my opinion. And that's it. So we've talked a little bit about the Martha. I've shown you what dongles I used. I've shown you what amps I used. So what IEMS did I select? I selected IEMS here which follow the kind of signature that we have here in the Dome, and those IEMs are the Theaudio, the HIFIGO. It has that tuck style bias. The ISN Audio Neo5 also has that tuck style bass execution. The Chopin also has again that tuck in the bass. The Canon MK2 again that tucked bass execution, and then the Globe and the Serial Audio 2, the PENON Globe and the PENON Serial Audio 2, which do not follow that style of bass, but they made sense to be here because there are two IEMs that I really like from PENON. I have them very high in my selection of favorite IEMs, so it made sense to have them compared here with the Dome, more in the sense of where does the Dome position next to them, what does the Dome offer, what doesn't the Dome lose out to in those two, than necessarily to see, this is the best, that's the worst. Okay, so we got 4 IEMs here which basically have the same tuck style bass execution, and 2 which do not have that but are here for the reason of being 2 other IEMs from PENON that I really enjoy. In terms of price, we're talking $299 for the Audio, $289 sorry for the Neo, $349 for the Dome. The Serial is $299. The Globe again $299. The Yanyan Canon Mark II is $369, and the GIZZ Audio binary Chopin is roughly $200. It was a little bit cheaper now during the 11/11 sales for HIFIGO. What is then the sound of the Dome? It's a tuck styled bass execution which tucks in at 300 Hz like the Yanyan. The others tuck in at 200 Hz roughly, and what that basically means is that then we have a little extra of mid-bass presence, and we maybe lose a little bit that idea of subwoofer. Okay, over here you notice that you have that subwoofer kind of feel. Over here as well the same thing, and on the HIFIGO as well the same thing, while on the Dome and on the Yanyan you have a little bit extra mid-bass slam, which makes things a little bit more dynamic, and stuff like rock and so on I guess can come across in a more enthusiastic or in a more realistic manner if you have it. The transition then into the mids, although it's a nice thick mid bass, I didn't consider to have really any bleed. Like I said, it's just energetic. There's no bleed, and that's one thing that, if there's one thing that we have to praise and give PENON and ISN their due merit, is that they have a tuning style which mids and bass are always very well executed. It doesn't really matter what the graph says, because you might look at the graph and the graph looks amazing and it will sound amazing, and you look at the graph and the graph doesn't look amazing and it still sounds amazing. So there's some sort of a magic here that somehow Mr. Chi from PENON has been able to instill in the engineers that make the IEMs for PENON and ISN, that they just sound good. Fine, fair enough, there might be IEMs which are technically more capable, technically more proficient, but when it comes to the organic feel of music, when it comes to that sensation of musicality, every single one of PENON's and ISN IEMs, they all have that in a very high order. Very organic, very musical. So that's 2 things that we cannot take, and the Dome is no different. The Dome is first of all very musical and very organic. It's very pure in a how can I put this? It's very a pure, unadulterated performance. It doesn't want to be the most technical IEM. It wants to be a fun, engaging IEM. So it loses out. No, I really say it trades rather. It trades a little bit of those technical aspects that it could perhaps have had when its tuning was being done, for being an IEM that you listen to it and immediately, I think the majority of us will enjoy the presentation that it's given. We will enjoy what is being done. Obviously, of course, if you are a fan, not a fan of bass, and if you are a fan of just a more diffuse style of tuning, and you just want everything to be very audiophile and very flat, then no, that's not an IEM for you. But if you want something which is going to get you going, and it's going to be engaging and satisfying to listen to, and you listen to anything from, let's say, you listen to Crazy from Julio Iglesias. I know some of you might be laughing now, but you listen to Crazy from Julio Iglesias, and the Dome does it nicely. It plays it nicely. Fair enough, I do prefer that song on the Globe, I'm not going to deny. But the fact that it's actually able to play that song in such a nice manner, for me at least, it's testament that it was properly tuned. On the other hand, you listen to something like No Scrubs from TLC, minute 120 to 145. The sub bass drops that occur there, this does it flawlessly. This and the HIFIGO are the ones that, well, to be honest, this and the Neo5 are the ones out of all of them that do that sub bass drop the best. On the Neo5, you notice that sub bass drop more because of the fact that then the upper frequencies are not as energetic. Okay, they don't come as much out. But the Hype 2 and the Dome, considering that they have such energetic mids, upper mids, and treble, the fact that you still notice that drop on the sub bass is for me at least impressive. Anyway, let's continue here now and start to try and break down things a little bit better. So bass on the Dome for me is very well executed. It's got plenty of sub bass, plenty of mid bass slam. There's nothing here that lacks any engagement. I mean, Sweet 16 from Billy Idol, or you listen to Englishman in New York from Sting, or you listen to the Shield Emitter from Canadian, or let's say Aspire from that. Everything is always got, in my opinion, with regards to the bass, the right energy, the right enthusiasm that it should have, if that's what's called for, and the right amount of relaxation and smoothness, if that is what is wanted. Okay. Mids as well, for me, no complaints. They very well executed. A little bit more forward than some of the other IEMs here, especially compared to the Neo, the Serial, and the Globe. Significantly more forward, but somehow the balance that they've struck between that energy of that forwardness in the mids and the bass has been so well done that it doesn't feel like it's forward. Let's put it that way. Okay, upper mids and treble in the right quantity. I never found an instance where there was any harshness, any lack of smoothness, or any sibilance or anything of the sort. That part of the spectrum always came across, to my ears at least, very, very well executed. Very smooth, clean, detailed, with the right tonality, the right timbre, the right amount of smoothness, let's put it that way. Okay, and I guess that to a great extent is testament to the usage of the Sonian BAs. Sonian BAs in the mids, when you get used to listening to so many IEMs and you start understanding certain small nuances in the difference of you notice, most of the times you can notice, okay, this is a Knowles, that's a Sonian, and one of the examples, obviously they've got two different styles of tuning, but you notice very well that this is more of a Knowles style BA here being, and it is Knowles, while here you notice it's Sonian. It's the same thing as here. They've also used Sonian in the Hype 2, and you notice that it's energetic, but it's got this tonality, this timbre to it that is just very, very satisfying. Okay. In terms of its technical capabilities, I found the soundstage to be decently wide. I would have wanted a little bit more width, I'm not going to deny, but it has good height and good depth. It does have a very good ability to pan from left to right. It does do that very well, but somehow I felt that it needed just a little bit more sensation of air. Okay, but not a deal breaker by any means. Imaging very good, and I think again what surprised me was, considering that it's got such a strong bass presence, you would think that the imaging would suffer somehow, and no, it's very, very capable of distinguishing between various instruments and various and singers and their position. So I didn't find any issue with the imaging. Detailed retrieval as well, good, on par with the soundstage. So a little bit more would have been better, but it's down to the way that it's been tuned. So, we have to make this balance. What we want, more technicalities, and we're losing musicality and organic sensation and fun factor, or we want it to be very, very clinical, very detailed. But we have to decide. And the way it's being done here, the detail retrieval is adequate. It's fine, but it could do with a little bit more. Okay. Well, could do with a little bit more if that's what you're after, obviously. And in terms of resolution, fine. Again, not an issue. So I would say that the standout technicalities are definitely the imaging and the timbre and the tonality. The timbre and the tonality and the imaging are the two technical capabilities that I think really jump out when you're looking at that aspect of how proficient it is executing things. Okay. In terms of its frequency range, what are the areas that I think stand out? Well, definitely the bass stands out. That's very obvious. And then it's the transition from the bass into the mids again. So the lower mids, I think they also are they are very engaging. They captivate you quite a bit, and I mean, and I think that's down to the timbre and the tonality, the way that it's being executed, being so well, at least for me, so correct. Okay, compare then the Dome to the selection that I've made here. Well, comparing it to the Globe and to the Serial. Comparing it to the Globe, they are two completely polar opposites. So that's why I don't think one is a substitute to the other. I would say rather that there are two different flavors. That's more about being neutral and being smooth and you know, definitely non-fatiguing in the highs or anything of the sort. While this one's got way more detail in the highs. Upper mids and treble here are more detailed than on the Globe by far. Which is better, which is worse? It's like I just said, there's no winner here. They just do things in a very different manner. I think what surprises and what surprised me as well a lot about the Globe was when you look at its graph and you look at the bass, you think, okay, this is going to be a little bit flat on the bass, but no, you couldn't be further from the truth. Although everything is, yes, very flat and stays within a very tight window of operation, it's got more than enough bass, more than enough mids. Honestly, it is a really, really nice sounding IEM, and it's one of the nicest sounding hybrids that I actually own, to be truthful. Obviously it's an IEM that's got a specific crowd of people that will enjoy it, but in general, it's a very, very gratifying IEM to listen to, and I like it a lot. So it's not a winner of the or beater of the Dome. It's a side grade to the Dome. If you have the Globe, it does make sense to get the Dome, because the Dome will give you more that energetic, high energy presentation that they just does it, but it doesn't do it at its best. Okay, let me put it to you this way: there are more songs, for example, that I found were as well or better executed or more fun executed in the Dome than I did that there were songs that it was the Globe taking the trophy. Okay, compared to the Serial, here things become closer. Yes, what you do obviously notice is that although they have got two different styles of bass, the bass here does stand out as being a little bit more present, more ominous than in the Serial. But overall, I actually find that the presentation of either one of them is closer than with the Globe. Probably the area where you will find the Dome beating the Serial is the fact that it's got more detail up top. So upper mids and treble, there's more information there. So there's more twinkles and sparkles, which is maybe perhaps the only real area where you could say the Serial could do with a little bit more. It's just a little bit extra detail up top. But then again, let's consider this is 3 BAs, a 10, 8 and a 6. This is 3 BAs, sorry, 3 DDs, and this is BAs which will by nature obviously have more detail up top. They will just have a different dynamics in that section than the DDs will have. So besides the fact that they obviously have been tuned with their different slight nuances introduced into each, one is DD, one is BA. This, even if they graphed absolutely the same, this would still sound a little bit more detailed, a little bit more cleaner. At least that's my opinion. So there isn't really a winner here. They are again, in my opinion, side grades to each other. This maybe gives us a more organic, more old school sound, while this one gives us still that organic old school sound, but it's got more detail to it. Okay, if I have to make let's say this is a kind of a 70s and this is a late 80s, early 90s kind of vibe, if you kind of get my idea. Compared here to the Neo5, if we are to look at the bass purely, the Neo5 is the winner for me. The Neo5 is the winner. However, the Neo5 bass, although being more present, especially in the rumble area, it lacks a certain amount of speed, which if it had a little bit more energy in the mids and upper mids and treble, would confer that speed to the bass. And that was probably the biggest flaw, or not the biggest flaw, but the biggest criticism that the Neo5 received, was that it sounded slightly slow sometimes. Okay, and I will say yes, it does sound a little bit slow. Again, it's down to the way it was tuned, the driver that was used. Maybe if a better quality driver had been used, maybe that wouldn't have been an issue. But that's the biggest difference that you find here, is that they've lost a little bit of speed in the Neo5 and cleanliness, for having a really good sub-bass presentation, and we have very much that subwoofer kind of vibe. While over here, the fact that obviously we have a little bit more mid-bass presence, and we got more mids and highs and treble, more mids and upper mids and treble, makes just the bass come across as snappier, cleaner. But ultimately, I repeat, in terms of the low bass, the sub bass presence, this has got more of it. I would say that maybe more people will be more happy with the Dome than they will with the Neo 5, and it's just basically down to the fact that the Dome has got that extra amount of detail that I think some people were saying that it's a pity that the Neo 5 didn't have it. I would still consider them side grades to each other, to be honest. There isn't a definite this one is worse, this one is better when it comes to comparing the PENON IEMS, and I'm being as honest as I can possibly be. Fine, maybe there's a little bit of bias because I like the serial and I like the globe a lot, and that's why I'm also saying that. But no, if I actually have to sit down like I did and compare them extensively like I also did, you will come to the same conclusion that I think I came to, which is they all have their own very special mojo, and to say that one is better and one is worse is not going to be fair, because if I stood now here and said that the Dome is the best one out of all these, that's not fair. It's just not fair, because that wouldn't be even the truth. Okay, it's got its own particular way of doing things, which some of them approximate more themselves to this, which is the case of the serial. I think the serial is probably the IEM here out of these that approximates itself closest to the Dome, while that one there is just too neutral, too smoothed out, and this one just hasn't got enough energy up top to give it that little extra snappiness, a little extra liveliness that it needs, and then making that bass be as entertaining as possible as it is over here, because the bass here on the Dome is definitely very entertaining. Again, let me repeat this so that everything is perfectly clear, because I don't want no issues. They've got two different styles of tuck. This is 200 hertz, this is 300 hertz, so definitely this has got more mid bass. This is more subwoofer like, this is more woofer like. Okay, let's put it that way. This here being more subwoofer, yes, you will have more that sub bass rumble, but because it doesn't have as much energy up top as the Dome, it makes the bass come across sometimes a little bit slow and less energetic or snappy. All right, that's it. Compared then here to the Chopin, the Yanyan Canon 2, and the Hype. Compared to the Chopin, this sounds very laid back, very chilled out by comparison. Although graphically the bass also does that tuck and everything, the bass here is nowhere near as close to the bass of the Dome. No, obviously we are talking about an 8mm driver here. So even though graphically it might look the same, it just doesn't have the same amount of energy, of presence. So bass wise, in my opinion, for my preference, this is better. Mids and highs, they basically match each other. Ultimately here, the fact that obviously they are representing two different price brackets. There's over $150 of difference in price between the two of them, but it all depends what you want. Do you want a more audiophile, more balanced, more coherent sound? Then okay, fine, I can argue that the Chopin will be the better option, especially considering that it's got a price which is $150 lower. If you are looking for a very high level of coherentness between the frequencies, but a more engaging, more fun, more exciting sound, then the Dome is the choice. Okay, so I would say that this comes down to, first of all, how much money you have available to spend, and what is ultimately your desire. You want something which has got nice, very nice bass, or something which is just very balanced and coherent across its reproduction. All right. Compared to the Yanyan, the Yanyan is the other one which also has that 300 hertz tuck, and compared here to the the Dome. Well, and compared to every single one of these IEMs, the Yanin is on this basis, it's the winner, which is it's got the tuning switches, and the tuning switches do change the tuning quite significantly, offering us, or those that have the Canon, obviously, a different tuning style and a different sound depending on what your mood is. So based on that premise only, it is the winner. If used on the level, on the setting which I have, which is both switches up, they are very similar. Very similar. I mean, it's actually quite uncanny, the similarity between the two of them. There are instances where I prefer the Canon. There are instances where I prefer the Dome. Ultimately, having to say which is the one that comes out on top, because sonically they are so close. It's not like sonically, I would say that maybe soundstage here is just a little bit better than over there. Timbre and tonality is about the same. Imaging is about the same as well. Resolution maybe a little bit better there than over here. Detail retrieval maybe a little bit better here than over there. In terms of the overall bass, mids and treble, again very evenly matched. I found that the treble here on the Dome was perhaps just a little bit more smoothed out, more along the lines that I prefer, while the treble here on the Canon on occasions got very much on the edge of maybe becoming, with one more click of the volume knob, becoming now aggressive. But as I said, they traded blows consistently, so there isn't like a definite winner or loser here. All right, I think the determining and deciding factor will be: do you want the switches because you play around with the tuning a lot and so on, or not? And if you're not, and if you just stick to one tuning, then probably the Dome would be the better one to go for. Let's put it that way, or the smarter choice. And finally, compared to the Hype 2, the Hype 2. Again, very similar in their presentation. There's a lot of similarities. Different bass stack. This is at 200 hertz. That's at 300 hertz, like I said. So you notice that that's got a little bit more mid bass slam, definitely, than the Hype 2. Although, funny enough, it's interesting because you listen to the Hype 2 and you listen to, for example, the Chopin, and you listen to the Neo5, and you definitely do notice that it's not a massive difference in terms of the slam, but it's just that little extra cleaner and faster. And I think comes down to how then the mids and the upper mids and the treble were executed. With regards to the Neo5, I think that this just edges out ever so slightly the Neo5 because of that extra energy that it has in the mids, upper mids and treble. It just cleans things up just that smidge, and makes the bass then come across seeming a little bit quicker, a little bit more snappier. All right. Compared to the binary, to the Giz Audio, it's just got more of everything. So between the two of them, I think if you have the binary and you want an upgrade with a similar sound, the Hype 2 is probably the most obvious choice. It's the one that makes the most sense. But going back here to the Dome, like I said, bass wise, maybe that extra cleanliness and the integration between the bass and the mids, upper mids and treble here is just slightly superior to the Dome, just ever so slightly superior to the Dome. Mids, pure mids wise, I would say that they are very evenly matched. There's a bigger dip here on the Dome. You'll see what I mean when I show you the graphs now, and I think that is the reason for that to be happening. And then treble, I prefer the treble on the Dome, but that's just me. I found that the treble on the Dome is just more natural. It's not that it's not good or not well done here, but it's just more natural. So again, this is very much trading blows here. It's not like one is a winner outright and just beats the other and just no. And the reality is this. If you own any one of these IEMs, you are owning something which is very well designed, it's been very well tuned, and the differences will be minimal differences. There are differences that you will notice if you are listening to it under ideal conditions, and it's not listening to it, like I've said countless times, in the metro that you'll pick up the difference between these IEMs. So you're going to have to listen to it in ideal conditions, in a quietish room, in a quiet environment, with a nice source, and with a with a song that you're already very acquainted to then say, ah, no, I can pick up the difference. Yes, there are IEMs, yeah, that those differences are noticeable. I mean, you can notice the difference between listening to a Neo5 and the Dome. It's just down to what you prefer, more dark representation or more overall balanced. You can pick up the difference as well between this and the Globe quite well, because it's just got more energy. You can pick up the difference between this and the Chopin because it's just got way more energy on the bass than on the Chopin. Mids, it's very similar, but there's more presence here in the lower frequencies. But when I'm comparing it, for example, to the Hype or to the Yanyan Canon 2, very difficult. And even with the serial, it's not an easy one to distinguish. Honestly, it is really not an easy one to distinguish. Anyway, guys, I hope I was able to give overall a clear picture of what the Dome is like. It's a solid IM, definitely a solid IM. I know that not all of us have the possibility to listen to it and to see if we really enjoy it, and you have to kind of base your decisions on what people like me and others that are reviewing are saying about it. So I mean, I don't want to be now here the person that brings about you spending money and then you're not liking it. So I would suggest, if you have the possibility, try and find the means to listen to it. But I think that the IEMs that I selected will already give you a pretty good idea of what the Dome is about. You know, the Dome is not a Neo5. So if you have the Neo5, this is going to be a brighter Neo5. If you have a serial, very close. It's kind of same thing with just a little bit more twinklies and sparklies. If you have a Globe, completely polar opposites. They complement each other. It's probably the best complement here. It's these two. Chopin, the Yanyan Canon 2, the Hype 2, and the serial are much closer overall. Although there are differences, they're much closer overall to the vibe the Dome is trying to give us. The one that's the closest to the Dome, that's a tough one. It's a toss-up between these two, I would say, actually. Toss-up between these two, then this one, the serial, and then the Chopin. But although the Chopin, you notice the difference in the bass. So I would say it's a toss-up between these two and then the serial. These three are probably overall the closest ones to the Dome's presentation. Okay. Anyway, guys, I'll show you now the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the PENON Dome. Straight away by looking at the graph, I'm sure many of you will be saying, oh, this has got bloated bass, it's ridiculous, it's going to be a mess. And so, no, it isn't. It actually sounds very, very good. And even this dip here, which seems quite prominent, is not as bad as it seems, because for some reason PENON and ISM just have this mojo when it comes to executing bass and mids, which just they do it somehow very well. Is it maybe the quality of the driver? Is it maybe the tuning that they're using? I don't know what it is. What I do know is that this tucks in at 300 hertz. One of two which do that. The other one is the Yanyan Canon, which is over here. So they're both tucking at 300 hertz. The Canon, comparatively to the Dome, does have a little bit more extension up top, but I prefer the extension of the Dome. It just sounds smoother. Fair enough, you could argue with me, oh, but if you use the tuning switches, you can balance it out. Yes, it's true, you can do that. And on that basis, the fact that you can actually tune slightly with the switches, the Canon, and which is the only IM of the ones that I selected, actually makes the Canon then the one that is the overall winner, if I have to look at it that way. If on the other hand you just put the Canon on one setting like I did, which is the 1:1 setting, which is the one that I think makes the most sense for the Canon, at least for me, and I then compare it in that fashion with the Dome has a treble which pleases me more. Okay, the rest is basically the same. They trade blows. I mean, they are very, very evenly matched. Okay, so that's compared to the Yanyan Canon. That's out of the way. Compared to the Globe, again, totally different. So I can't really say that I mentioned it earlier, they are side grades to each other, and I think the graph speaks enough for itself. One is very smooth, very relaxed. Again, not a graph that you, by looking at it, would say, oh, it's going to be sounding good. I mean, no, the Globe sounds phenomenal. You would think maybe the Globe had a little bit more upper mids and treble as compared to the Dome, but it doesn't. Funny enough, it doesn't. The Dome does have a little bit more detail up top, more twinklies, more sparklies, but both of them are excellent, and for me, side grades to each other. So that's the Globe out of the way. The next one I'm going to be showing you now is the Neo5, the ISN. Another one of the IEMS which also has that tucked bass, but now this time at 200 hertz. The difference to the globe will be, to the dome will be that the dome has got a little bit more mid bass impact. Also, the Neo's got more relaxed mids to upper mids, so it sounds a little bit more warmer, a little bit more lush, a little bit more not closed down, just a little bit. Because if you actually look carefully here, then in the area from 4K onwards, they are basically the same. It's just the area between, let's say, 1 and 4 where the dome has got way more energy, so vocals are more present, female vocals come out more, and what that basically does is it allows, well, not only the fact that you've also got more mid bass, but it allows for the bass to just be a little bit quicker, a little bit more dynamic than the bass on the Neo. The bass on the Neo not only has it been tuned to be more subwoofer like, but because it doesn't have this extra energy up top, it sounds a little bit more, it sounds a little bit slow at times. And when you compare it, for example, to something like, let me see, where is it? The Hype, exactly. The Hype, let me just take away quickly the Dome. The Hype, as you can see, is very similar to the Neo5. Very, very similar. The difference is, because the Hype has got more energy in the upper mids and treble, it cleans up the bass and makes the bass sound a little bit quicker, a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more incisive in its impact. Obviously, it's also two 10mm drivers as opposed to a single. But it's the fact that it has this energy here that allows the bass to be, yes, tucking in at 200 hertz, yes, maybe not as possibly mid bass impactful, but somehow it just pulls it off together nicely. It just manages to do it. And so the Hype and the Neo, although they have the same sort of bass curve, the Hype sounds just a little quicker, just a little bit snappier because of the amount of energy that it has up top. That helps with that, and that's it. Compared to, I'll leave you the Hype and compare it to the Dome. Compared to the Dome has got a little bit more mid bass, that's evident, and it's a bit more forward in the vocals. So male vocals, sorry, come across just a little bit more energetic than on the Hype 2, and the Hype 2, although it's one of those IEMs that has got that tucked bass, but maybe that separation between subwoofer and the rest has been not as prominent as it is on the Neo. On the Neo5, you notice more that separation. They very much are very close. You know, there's differences here, definitely in the mid bass and in the fact that the way the mids transitioning into the up mids are done. But the overall balance that it's been struck is very, very similar. And I'll give you in a second. I'll give you what my take on that might possibly be. So we've compared it to the Hype, we've compared it to the Neo, we've compared it to the Globe. Compared now to the Serial. So that's that. Compared now here to the Serial. The Serial, above 4K again, they're very similar. It's this area here where the mids from up to upper mids are more prominent, more present on the Dome, and they just give it that little extra energy. The bass, honestly, either one does bass very well. One in a gliding style, one in a tuck style. Either one does bass very well, and I would say that again, they basically complements to each other. They're not really. There's no real winner here, honestly. Maybe there's a little bit of bias, like I mentioned before, but they complements to each other. I really don't think that one outright beats the other or vice versa. Okay, and compared here to the binary now. Finally, this HIDIZS audio binary Chopin. Again, that tuck style of bass. It's not so much here in the mids that you see the big difference, but because, yes, you notice there's a significant less amount of mid bass impact, the HIDIZS audio sounds thinner. Okay, it just sounds not as dominant as the Dome. I would say that the best upgrade for the HIDIZS audio, the binary, will definitely be the the Hype 2, and let me just put it up, will definitely be this, because as you can see, they are very similar, very similar. The way the pin again starts, there's just a little bit more extra energy between 3.5 and 7K on the the audio on the Hype, and a little bit more, well, not a little bit more, quite a bit more. This doesn't really show the truth. Quite a bit more bass presence and bass energy. The sub bass is, we mustn't forget one thing. This is an 8mm doing this, while these are two dual 10s. So those two dual 10s displacement is the most important. It makes it felt. So there's a massive difference in terms of the bass actually, as opposed to what you would think from the graph, that there isn't much difference. Now there is. In terms of quantity, big difference. Quality, you could argue it's about the same, but quantity, significantly more. Now, what I think might be one of the reasons that justifies some of these IEMs not sounding as lacking on the mid-bass, although they have that early tuck as compared to others, is the ratio that is struck between let's say this area here between 70 and 150 hertz. So the amount of energy that we have here, okay, and the upper mids here between 2 and 3K. How those two ratios there, or those two areas balance each other, I think is one of the reasons why it will make the mid bass sound more present or not, even though they've got an early tuck. And how clean and snappy that bass is. So if I look at here, for example, the Dome, I can see that this area between 70 and 150 is quite energetic and very much matches that there. However, if I take something like, for example, here the Neo5, 70 and 150, it sounds, it's got less energy, it's less full, okay. Yes, it is kind of almost matching the level of that area there of 2 to 3, but the balance here pins more towards this, so it sounds more bassy, more sub bass, and it loses out on that impact or that cleanliness that you have, for example, on here, where you got way more energy there, which helps kind of make this section here just more full. It's a difficult, I mean, I might be saying something which is complete nonsense, but I look at this ratio somehow, and it just, for me, it makes sense, because I look at it, for example, and I've just placed the Hype. The Hype, although this area again between 70 and 150 is very similar to how the Neo5 does it, the fact then that 2 to 3 areas got just a little extra energy, they match each other better, and because they match each other better, it just makes that bass, that mid-bass presence there feel a little bit more there. So on the audio, on the Hype 2, although the bass here you would think you're going to feel the lack of mid bass on both of them being very similar, and both of them have a very subwooferish type of presentation. Somehow the Hype 2 just has a little extra of mid bass impact that makes it just edge out the Neo. If, for example, I take the Yanyan and I compare it to the Hype 2, if I look at that area there between 70 and 150, and I compare it to this area, they are very evenly matched. There's more energy there, but you have enough energy here as well to give this that snappiness that it needs, okay, that quickness that it needs. Like I said, this is just a small thing that I've been noticing. I could be totally wrong. I could be saying something which makes absolutely no sense, but that's how that's the gut feeling that I get. And here on the Dome, that area there between 2 and 3, and this area here between 70 and 150, they are both very energetic, and that's why, in my opinion, this whole the bass comes across with the right amount of cleanliness, although you would think that the bass is bloated and excessive. It just comes across very clean, very dynamic, very engaging. Anyway, guys, I hope I was able to position the dome well for you guys. Any questions you might have, please feel free to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer as I always do. All right, you take care now. Bye bye.